Hello again, and if you're still here for part 4 of my Masterpiece collection discussion, fair play to you, because I think I'd have been bored to tears by now. But hopefully you're getting something out of it. We're now on to my favourite part, really. You know, I was always a Decepticon fan. That's how I started my collection, and these are my favourite bots aesthetically and probably engineering wise as well, actually. So let's move on without further ado to my Season 1, Generation 1, More Than Meets the Eye cast. We'll start, of course, with the big bad himself, everyone's favourite tyrannical despot, Megatron. Now, you may think this is MP36 at first glance, but actually this is the infinite transformation version of the figure, IT-01, Emperor of Destruction. Now it's done with a much flatter cartoon grey than the Takara MP36 release. Now I do have MP36 and I had that first. I paid quite a lot of money for it, and I'll get around to that when I discuss him. He's somewhere else in my display along with MP10, and I'll get on to the reasons why I swapped him out when I actually discuss that figure. But for now, let's just take a look at IT-01. I really like it. I only got it a few weeks ago, maybe a couple of weeks ago actually, and I got it from eBay. I was thinking about getting it for a while. It was about 65 quid to get it from China or from my seller. This came up 45 quid on eBay from a UK seller. I'd have had it within a few days. There were a couple of caveats. It only had one cannon, so it doesn't have the English cannon, the English voice cannon with the purple LED and the Frank Welker clips. That's not with this figure. And it also only included one blue Kremzik, not the little yellow guy that I really wanted. But from what I understand, a lot of them only came with the blue one anyway. In the second run, it was the first run that included the secondary cannon and all 3 Kremzik. I've actually got on order, or will have coming for Father's Day, the Mod Fans upgrade kit, which has the secondary cannon and 2 additional Kremzik and the back panel for the figure, although mine, as you can see, does actually have the back panel, so I don't really need that. But I'm hoping, I'm pretty sure I'm probably going to get another blue and a purple Kremzik, but, you know, fingers crossed I get a yellow and a purple, then I'll have all 3. But really what I want is the cannon with the Welker voice clips and the purple LED, because, you know, the Takara MP36 didn't have an LED, and the other ones had red LEDs and completely incorrect cannon sound as well, which was like a pew pew laser sound instead of the recognisable G1 fusion cannon sound. But once I've got that, I'll be swapping it out, and yeah, this guy is awesome, really. I mean, it's not as good as I was led to believe, I'll say that. Or maybe it was just mine, I don't know. I mean, I had a few issues with it. The face sculpts were generally really good, but the mouths, the black paint in them wasn't great, so I had to use a Sharpie, like a really fine Sharpie, to paint some of the grey in, or paint over some of the grey with black. Now, I did that pretty well for most of them, but the first one I did, I used a slightly thicker Sharpie before I realised I had a really fine point one, and I had a tiny little bit, only ever so tiny little bit, go onto one of the lips, and also coloured in slightly too far on the underside of the mouth compared to MP36. It doesn't look bad. It's just now I've done it, it just annoys me. I mean, if I didn't tell you, or if you didn't know, it wouldn't probably look out of place. It's just, you know, one of those things. Still looks okay, and to be honest, it's on the face that I'm not going to use as much as this one anyway. I really like the flat colours on this. I like the black. I like the flatter grey. I think the faction symbol, that the water slide that I put on, came out really well. It looks a lot better than the Tomb one on the MP36 official. Yeah, I just think this guy all round is great. I mean, as I said, the only issues I had with mine I really that his left shoulder, the butterfly joint on it. It's not even. I don't think it's really supposed to be a butterfly joint, but it's where it connects, and it can act as a butterfly joint. It's quite loose compared to the right side. Also, his chest, when you handle him, if you're handling him and moving him and posing him, it has a tendency to move up a little bit. His waist sort of swivel. When that chest moves up, you can see the pin or the pole that connects his waist to his upper body. So obviously you can't at the moment because it's in place. His waist is quite loose, not terribly loose, but looser. And also all of his joints, all of his panels are much looser than MP36. Now in some cases that's good because the hip skirts and things, these that I'm focusing on here, they're much easier to manipulate. You don't feel like you're going to break them. And everything really about him is much easier to manipulate. But he has die-cast legs, which MP36 doesn't. To compensate, they've put ratchets in. Now, the ratchets aren't as stiff as I would have liked, so they're not terrible. They're not going to like flop and fall, but in every video I've seen, they've been really sturdy, and in mine, they're not. They're just a little bit loose, or a little bit looser than I was expecting. So while not bad, it's taken the shine off of it somewhat. I was expecting it to be like an absolute MP36 destroyer, living up to his Emperor of Destruction moniker, but it's definitely better aesthetically. I mean, I guess that's subjective, but for my toon aesthetic, it's definitely better. I prefer the lighter grey and the lighter face, and the black, solid black hands instead of sort of charcoal grey. And solid black everything, Canon, whatever. But yeah, I don't know. It just doesn't. It's not the home run I've been led to believe. It's not the absolute fantastic pinnacle of engineering that people have been making it out to be. I do like the scratch-resistant coating on it though, because it hasn't chipped. I can't see any real chips or scratches on it anywhere. And obviously it's a second-hand product, and I've been manipulating it, and really it looks pretty damn good. I mean, there are a few sprue marks on it, just as you'd expect from a KO or even an official, to be honest, but they're pretty minimal, and there are no obvious defects anywhere else on the figure. So for 45 quid, I'm pretty damn happy, I have to say, and it's a really good figure in the centerpiece of my display. Now, moving on, we come to, it's actually MP02, technically, not MP13, because this is the Hasbro version of Soundwave, even though he has red eyes. Now, this is the one that started it all. This was a gift I received a few years ago now. I forget how many, at least 3 or 4, maybe more. And I've never really I saw it in Toys R Us along with the Optimus Prime, the Hasbro Optimus Prime, and I was like, oh my god, 120 quid for a Transformer. I mean, it looks amazing, but who the hell would pay that? That's insane. Nobody would be stupid enough to pay that for a Transformer. God. But someone bought it for me as a present, for which I will be ever grateful. And it was the only one I had for years, actually. And it's what started, or, it was only, I've only really been collecting properly for just over a year and a half, by this stage. But this was the solitary figure in my collection for a long time, and I love it. I really do. I think it's not completely G1 accurate, but it's very close, and it's so evocative of the toon and the comic and the G1 toy. It strikes a really good balance. I mean, I'm not saying I would be someone who wouldn't want to go for a more toon accurate one, but I really like this version. I think it's a really great figure, and yeah, it's got a special place in my heart, because it is the one that started it, or started this current obsession with masterpiece figures. And as you can see, obviously the Hasbro one, the Hasbro version of the figure comes with a lot more than the Takara version anyway. But what it didn't come with, and what really bugged the hell out of me, was red. It didn't come with red eyes. It came with yellow eyes, which is more toy accurate and Marvel accurate than it is toon accurate. Now, I like the Marvel stuff and the toy, and obviously I still have the Soundwave toy from when I was a kid, again up in my loft somewhere. But I wanted red eyes, and I saw there was a non-F replacement thing, but I couldn't get hold of it. And it was on the way that the screw was positioned, you would churn up the head trying to do it because it would bore out the plastic as you took the screw out. And also in later versions, they glued the head together, so you had to cut tabs and you could ruin the articulation of the head. So I was really reticent to do it, but then mod fans, or Model, I think they're calling themselves now. It was a Model 002 kit anyway, is what I picked up. And it comes with an entire replacement head for the figure, which still has the silver crest on it, like the Hasbro version, which the Takara doesn't have. But it comes with both yellow and red eyes and a light-up gimmick. Now, I don't really use the light-up gimmick, and I'm not going to try and reach in past Megatron to turn it on. It doesn't look great. There's a lot of light leak anyway. But it's a nice figure without it being lit up, to be honest. They're probably not quite as illuminated or shiny. I think the Takara ones look a little bit more like either they're painted or they've got more reflection in them or more silver specks. But these, even without being, without the light gimmick, they still look nice. These red eyes, they work well. He looks more G1 accurate, certainly enough for me anyway. And he also comes with a light up concussion blaster as well, which has a purple end on it. I'm not going to try and turn that on from here. But he looks really fantastic. And as I said, he comes with all of his cassettes. I mean, you can see at the back there, he comes with Buzzsaw, which is the bird he came with, or the condor he came with in his original G1 1984 G1 toy package. And then perched on Megatron's arm, which I didn't go into, is Laserbeak, the other condor, who I believe came in a package with, I think it was Frenzy, which, as far as I'm concerned, is this guy. Fuck you if you think he's Rumble. He's not. He's Frenzy. He'll always be Frenzy. He was Frenzy in the comic. He was Frenzy in the toys. Some both fucked up. Deal with it. I'm kind of joking, but I'm also kind of not. I always see this guy as Frenzy. I know most people see him as Rumble because of the Toon, and it's weird. I'm a Toon guy, but it really, really pissed me off. It always bugged me as a kid that the fact that they said this guy was Rumble when I was like, nope, the other guy's Rumble. It's the toys Rumble, the comics are, toy Rumble is red, the comic Rumble is red. Frenzy was blue in the comics and in the toys. Stupid Sunbow mistakes. Anyway, so this is Frenzy, and next to him Rumble. And I've put the pile drivers on, even though I know that he didn't have them in the comics or the toys, but I do kind of like them, and it differentiates him between Frenzy anyway. I like them both, and I think Rumble was packaged with Ravage in G1, and I think this is probably the worst cassette. It's just quite flimsy, and it's quite unimpressive. There's like a big gap in his head, and doesn't really look that great. I know that Ocular Max do some tapes, all 5 of the tapes, but to be honest, the scale's well out of whack. I mean, they're way too big for what they should be. In the Toon, I know the comic was different again, but like in the Toon, the scale of the cassettes was that the bots was slightly bigger than humans. The Ocular Max ones, they're way too big. I mean, the cassettes don't turn into anything that could fit into Soundwave for starters, and they're the size of a car bot in robot mode, which they're not supposed to be. And again, Jaguar is the Ocular Max version of Ravage, and I think it's Furor and Riot are the two, Frenzy and Rumble. But Jaguar is just too big compared to Ravage, and I forget what the birds are called, but again, they're comically large. I mean, they would be, as big as the upper torso of these two guys if I had them. So I've stuck with the Masterpiece cassettes. I think they scale pretty well. Now, sort of lurking behind, which is probably quite fitting for his cartoon incarnation, is good old MP29. Laserwave, or Shockwave as he's more commonly known in the UK and US. I love this guy. Like, I legitimately straight up think he's probably my favourite ever Transformers character. Not for his Toon portrayal, I have to say, because that was awful. Although I did like his voice. I think it was Corey Burton did the voice. but I hated in fact, he was kind of a smaller, snivelling, like lackey. Whereas in the comics, and even in his toy bio, he was second only to Megatron, arguably on a par, or maybe even more powerful than Megatron. Cold, calculating military leader, you know, succeeded where Megatron didn't in conquering the Autobots for a bit at the end of the initial run of Marvel Transformers comics. He was a complete, you know, badass. He beat Megatron, he captured Prime, kept him as this headless sort of, you know, Matrix bitch, until he passed it on to Buster Witwicky. I just love the character. I think it's great. I mean, the Masterpiece incarnation doesn't really do justice to the Marvel version, in which he was as big as Megatron and as powerful. He's quite a bit smaller here, as you can see. He's even smaller than Soundwave. But it is how he looked in the toon, and I think it is a very toon accurate sculpt and deco. I mean, he was more of a lilac wave. People call him that, and they hate it. And they have released an MP29 Plus, which is much darker and more toy accurate. Even though they've said it was more toon accurate, it's actually more toy accurate. He was a much darker purple in the toy. In the toon, he was sometimes darker, but it was never that dark, and he was far more often this light, and his animation model was this light as well. So this is accurate. I loved it as a kid. I couldn't get enough of it. You couldn't get the figure in the UK. I managed to pick him up, or pick up a third party. The original mould was Astro Magnum, sometimes called Shockwave, whatever. There were different versions of it, Galaxy Gun or something like that. There's a whole article online somewhere if you want to look it up about where, you know, the toy origins of Shockwave. But yeah, I have and still have to this day the Astro Magnum one. Never could get a G1 Shockwave in the UK, but I love that figure. It was grey, admittedly, but I stuck my own Decepticon logo on it with sellotape, and it was my Shockwave, and I loved it. And I was so happy to finally get this guy. He was my second ever Decepticon purchase behind Soundwave, and yeah. He's not as impressive as Quake Wave or some of the other third parties. Quake Blast, I think, is another one. I don't know, there's a few of them. But I just think in terms of toon accuracy, this is by far and away the most accurate. And for that reason alone, he deserves a pride of place in my collection. I've also replaced his head actually with the Shadow Fisher upgrade, and again, I'm not going to do the light up effects, but I hate light piping in general. I think it's a shit gimmick. So this head doesn't have a light piping panel on the back. It's a solid piece, but it does have a button, a pretty seamless button that turns on an LED that goes between yellow, cartoon accurate yellow, orange or red. So that's a pretty sweet feature. Did add to the value of the figure, or the cost of the figure, I should say. Moving on, Reflector. God, awful character. I never liked it in G1. Never had a UK toy release. Well, that's just a lie. I actually own a G1 Reflector. I didn't realise at the time it was even a Transformer thing. I thought it was just some transforming robot. It wasn't until years later that I realised what the value was, and I wish to Christ I kept taking better care of it, because it's in pieces in my loft now, pretty much. And yeah, what might have been, eh? But yeah, Spectro, Spyglass and Viewfinder, I believe. They look very different in the G1 toy. Mine were not Transformers branded. They were just camera robot I picked up from a shop somewhere. It was back in the 80s. There were a lot of things like that. As I say, Amiga Supreme, Shockwave, Reflector. A lot of the Diaclone toys were available in the UK, even though the Transformers branded ones weren't. This is this is Fans Toys version. It's Fans Toy Spotter. I don't think there's a perfect version of Reflector. There's another version, KFC Opticlones and Make Toys Visualizers. Now, I think the Make Toys ones are actually proportionally and aesthetically probably the best, apart from the colour choices, which are just mind-bogglingly wrong. If it wasn't for that, I would have gone for them over these, especially because Spotters are a lot more expensive. I think the Visualizers are 80-something quid. Spotter went for stupid money. Second hand, because obviously it's out of production, but I managed to get these for 160 quid, which I was waiting on the reissue of the the KFC Opticlones. They were supposed to come out sometime last year. The deadline was missed several times. I got bored of waiting. They still haven't been re-released now, even though they've been on the slate for ages. The option to get this came up. I preferred them anyway, apart from maybe the face sculpts. So I grabbed them when I could, and yeah, I think they do a job. They fill in the Decepticon ranks, which are pretty outnumbered, even though they're more powerful robots. There's probably twice as many Season 1 Autobots as there are Decepticons. These guys really, they do help to bolster the ranks, and they look the part. As I say, I've faction logoed them up. I wish they had more like white faces, the stupid chin goatees I don't like. But the colour schemes aren't bad, they're pretty good. The camera mode's not as good as the KFC one. But who the fuck displays it as a camera? Jesus Christ. I mean, if you want to, that's a cartoon accurate reflector. That's as cartoon accurate a reflector as I need. I don't need a full size one. But yeah, the bots themselves, they look okay. They're not great. They're probably a little bit too tall, these versions, but yeah, they do a job. And my final Season 1 Decepticons are the Seekers, or collectively known as the Seekers, and that is Starscream, Thundercracker and Skywarp, otherwise known as Meteor, Lightning and Skycrow, because they ran out of ingenious names for Skywarp. I had Meteor. I got him. I was all ready to pull the trigger on one of the KO Starscreams. I think it might have been the BB7 or the Yes model or something, because I didn't like the official Takara. I thought they were really horrible, kibbly things. And then, just by pure accident, I saw this guy had been released, literally just released. And I bought it without hesitation because it's so toon accurate. It was 90 quid at the time. Unbelievable bargain, considering that the sort of Seeker clones, the brothers, were 110 quid each. So Meteor, and the reissue of this was at least that. Got a really good deal on him. I think it's before, sometime before Brexit, and the pound wasn't taking quite as much of a hammering as it currently is. It's still taking a bit of a hammering, but not as much. I really like the figure. I think he looks great. I mean, people moan about his face and his head being too small and his face being too dark, but I like it. Under normal light, it looks okay. It's not great in photos or video, but the sculpt is so bang on G1. It just looks fantastic in both modes, I have to say. I don't like the fact the backs of the wings are hollow, but you can't really tell from the front. It's pretty shitty that they did it like that, but they are produced in wing fillers that you can get with the cone heads. I'm going to buy the cone heads when they are available, but I think that these are still really great figures. I had to pick up Thundercracker as well because he was my favourite jet when I was a kid, because you couldn't get him. He was really rare in the UK. And he had more of a metallic dark blue finish, but I still like his toon accurate finish here. Well, I say toon accurate. For some unknown reason, they decided to make his, what should be a silver bits, kind of an bluish tinge to them. I don't know why. I mean, you can see with Skywarp, he's silver as he should be. They've got the right face colour and everything else. All right, his arms and feet should arguably be more of a grey than a black, but it still works. And they made the cockpits a bit of a piss yellow on them instead of the gold they should be. But I guess they just wanted to differentiate between the three. But, they've got completely different fucking colour schemes. That would have done the job. But anyway, I digress. I still think he looks great. And as does Skycrow as well. I think he looks awesome as well. In fact, I think I prefer his deco now, arguably maybe prefer it to Thundercrackers. Lightnings. He came with black fists originally. They saw sense ahead of release and included purple fists you could swap out, because Jesus, how the hell did they get that wrong? It's like they never watched the toon, you know what I mean? It's just like these designers, they make these great looking figures and then they go, oh, I don't know, let's just put a completely different colour scheme on, because that won't piss people off. But yeah, I think all three of these look fantastic. They are easily the best versions of the Seekers. Again, screw anyone who says otherwise. If you go for the Takara or any of the other ones and you're a toon fan, you're mental, because these are far more accurate. I just think these are great, to be honest. They're pretty poseable. Yeah, they've got butt flaps. You can't really see them from the front. Jet modes are really good. Yeah, I can't say enough good things about them, and I'm hoping the cone heads turn out to be just as good. That concludes the season 1 Decepticon lineup. Almost. I think I'll tell you what. We'll go across. We'll do it now while we're on a roll. Back to the other details. I know they're in the different details, but they are technically season 1. So here we have the Insecticons, and I wasn't going to go for fans toys. I'd heard bad things about the engineering and the durability, at least, of Kickback anyway. So also they were stupidly expensive. So I went for the Bad Cube Evil Bug Core. I think what are they called? Kick Butt, Hypno, and Claymore, I believe. Left to right. They're pretty cool. I mean, they're not amazing. I mean, the scale's probably a little bit off. They're a little bit too tall, not too much, but they're pretty good. I like the colour swap gimmick on Claymore. Sorry, Hypno, their bombshell. It's unlike the fans toys where you had 2 versions, one purple and one grey. The colour on the bug here, he's purple in bug mode, alt mode, and he's grey in robot mode, so that's great. Don't have to buy 2 figures. They come with some Energon cubes. I think they look G1 accurate enough to the tune to do the job, and they were cheap. They were 130 quid, so you can't really go wrong with that. Fans toys, I think, was probably 130 quid for one, especially now, maybe even more. So yeah, I'm glad I have them. They bolster the ranks again. It was never really that into the Insecticons. I think the most memorable thing that happened to them was that they got their head driven over in the movie and transformed into Cyclonus and Scourge or Sweeps, whatever you want to think. But I'm glad to have them. What I am really, really glad to have, and I'm doing it because although it's not part of the More Than Meet the Eye cast, it is part of season 1, is this fella here. Good old Devastator, the Constructicons. Again, couldn't get him as a kid, could not get him for love nor money, and even money in the UK. He just wasn't available anywhere that I could find. Now, I'm really glad I have him. I got him one of the first Decepticons I had. When I had about 3 or 4, I think. I had him, Shockwave, Megatron, and Soundwave, obviously. He's great. I know it's not a masterpiece scale really, but he's close enough. And the quality isn't up there with Masterpiece. I mean, the plastic's a lot cheaper, but it's a mass-produced toy. It's meant for kids to play with, really, not adults to collect. But that actually works in its favour because it's quite simple. It suits the toy. Sorry, the toy actually looks quite Toon-esque, for want of a better phrase. This is the Hasbro version, which I picked up for 120 quid originally when it was released. I really like it. There are some things that the Takara one does better in individual bot mode, but I think the Hasbro one looks better in combined mode because it doesn't have a lot of the extraneous detailing that the Takara one has. The only caveat with that is that the fists are black on the Hasbro version, where they should be purple. But as of about a week and a half ago, I managed to secure some purple fists. So now my year and a half or longer, in fact, no, God, what am I talking? Probably getting them for 3 years now since I got this. What am I talking about? I had this in 2016. As I say, it's one of the first ones I bought, my initial 4 Decepticons, before I started seriously collecting a year and a half ago. This guy, it's had black fists. Now, I've got purple fists for him. The OCD has been satisfied. I think he looks better with them. I do like the simplified design. I don't even mind the fact that his foot looks like that. I know a lot of people do. They think the cab should look more like a cement mixer cab from the 80s, but it didn't ever look like that in the toon, really. It was more like that in the comic and the toy, the G1 toy, but the cartoon always had this kind of weird peg foot. And I think it's really good. I think the face sculpt is better than the Takara one. The Takara does do some things better individually, I concede that. And it has more paint and more detailing, and it's probably higher quality. But just for the cost and the overall, impact, this guy's awesome. I love him, and I'm so glad. I mean, it may have taken me, 30 plus years, but I finally got my my Devastator. Okay, so that concludes my roundup of my Season 1 Decepticons. In the next part, I'm going to pretty much finish up with Decepticons from Season 3, and then I may stretch it out to another part focusing on my additionals or my surplus stock. We'll see how we go. But for now, thanks for listening, thanks for watching, and goodbye.